Okay. So when it comes to mind management, nothing can beat the ancient Indian wisdom of Vedanta. That's how I feel. I don't know how all of you feel. And the whole world kind of looks towards East when it comes to the mind and meditation and things like that. And one very important thing to remember in the way I'm presenting it is that here the brain and the mind are two different things. So brain is like a hardware and mind is software. So or in transmigration, mind and intellect travel to the subtle world and to another body. So when we say that, punarjanma, we are talking about mind and intellect going, not the physical body. And so brain does not go, but the mind does go. So those little things that, remember. So in my presentation, the complete focus is on mind and not on brain. So, and also the purpose of trying to understand the mind from the Vedantic perspectives is when we study mind from their Vedantic perspective, the idea is to reach the highest goal in human life, get bliss. You can call it moksha, freedom, whatever you want to call it, freedom from limitations and misery. So that's the whole purpose, to try to understand the mind from here. Okay, so now the next slide. Will you be able to move it?
Oh, you want me to move it?
Because I cannot move. It's your screen, unfortunately.
Why it's not doing it?
You can control.
Okay.
So,
Is this the one?
yeah. So to start with, in Vedanta, the consciousness is primary. We are just doing the background. We'll see how the mind comes from there. So everything is manifested from it, including the mind, from the consciousness. So that's what we have to remember. And then consciousness in its purest form is called Brahman. I think most of you know that who are studying Vedanta. And that means without any conditioning. And according to the Upanishad, Maya is the power of Brahman. So with that combination of, now it's as though consciousness is consciousness and its power. So with that Maya, it appears as though that the vibration happens in Brahman and the cosmos manifests from it, first in the subtle form and then in the gross form. Next. So the consciousness, we all know that is eternal, indestructible, and all-pervading. And then its consciousness is divided as though into two, Purush and Prakriti, they call it. Here the Purush doesn't mean man. Here it means spirit and matter. If I have to translate it in English, it will be called spirit and matter. Yeah, next. So in modern language, the Prakriti is referred as matter. So when we say matter, that we are talking about Prakriti. This is the language they use in Vedanta, Prakriti. And matter can be gross or subtle form. And what we mean by subtle is more pervasive, higher, or inner. So remember these three words, and that because then when we come to mind, we will see how it's a subtle matter. So how can the same thing have three different forms? So best example is ice cube. You take an ice cube. So ice cube is nothing but H2O, water, but once it has a certain temperature, it becomes solid. So you can see it, there's a shape to it and everything. And when you start giving heat, it becomes subtler, it becomes water form. So then it will take the shape of, if you put in a cup, it'll take that shape, that kind of thing. And then you keep putting the heat on, it'll become steam and you'll disappear, but it's still there, I can't see it. That's called subtle. So just definition of subtle. So in Vedanta, they have described that how this whole process starts. So it's from Brahman, Prakriti manifests, and at that stage, it's called avyakta. Avyakta means jo vyakt nahi hua, jaise Hindi mein bolte hum log. It means unmanifested. Why? Because at this stage, we cannot grasp what is there by our senses. So it's called, from our language, our perspective, human perspective, it's called unmanifest, avyakt. So whether you call it Prakriti or Avyakt is the same thing. And from Prakriti, they say something comes, it's called Mahanatma. That's the word used in Kathopanishad and some of the other Upanishads. And Mahanatma is the same as Ishwar, we call it, or there's another word, Hiranyagarbha. That's like a womb of the whole universe. That's why it's called Hiranyagarbha. So this Mahanatma, from this the Virat comes. Virat is like the cosmic being. It's called the entire cosmos, physical world. So that's what it's called. And in modern language, we call it the physical universe, the entire cosmos. So if we just think of it this way, that if the 5 elements in our body, they come from the 5 main elements. And in Vedanta, when we talk of elements, it's slightly different definition. And we all know it's earth, earth, fire, water, ether. Those are the, 5 elements, Vayu, air. And so same way, well, let me first explain a little bit in my own words. So when we talk about these 5 elements in our body, they are connected to the entire elemental thing, 5 elements. There's a connection there because it has come from there. It has been borrowed to make my body. But it is that way it is connected. The same way, according to Vedanta, all minds are also connected to the total mind. But when we are born, we have this, we forget everything. Okay, forgetfulness happens. That's how Prakriti has made us individuals. But in essence, our minds are connected, and that's why you can see that some people have that telepathy, or they can read other people's thoughts and all that. Very rarely, but we have heard about that because our minds are connected. So just wanted to say from Vedantic perspective, that's how it is. So that Mahanatma stage, at that stage, everybody is connected. And then the example is, it's like electricity. Electricity comes from the powerhouse, but it goes to everybody's house, and then I can plug it in my instrument, and my instrument becomes alive. Just think of it that way. So the same way, the minds are also connected. And Mahanatma at that stage, it's omniscient, all-knowing. When we talk about God is all-knowing, because we are all connected that way. Okay? And so in physical universe and subtle universe, we can call it microcosm and macrocosm. So at macrocosm, we are all connected. And microcosm level, we feel as though we are separate. It's a play of Maya, they call it. Maya makes us feel separate. And here the most important thing is mind. Where does it come from? It comes from the subtle matter. So in Vedanta, mind is a subtle matter, and it is different from consciousness. But consciousness gives its power to make it conscious. But actually it is inert only. But it gets the power from the consciousness. So this separation, we have to understand that it's a subtle matter. Okay, next. So here is, I took a picture from one of the books of Chinmaya Mission called Self-Unfoldment. So you're showing the microcosm and macrocosm, that how, there is, if you see the lower part, Virat, Hiranyagarbha, and Ishvara, causal body, subtle body, gross body. You must have heard of this word. And then at the individual level, when we are awake, then it's, we gross body, and we have all 5 senses in the body, and we can experience the world. When we go to sleep, we are in subtle world. So it's called the dream world, dreamer. And the causal body is deep sleep. And it, just like cause, is the cause of the other 2 bodies. Next. So in chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna explained that Brahman has 2 different nature. One is called the higher nature, and one is called the lower nature. And higher nature is the consciousness that we all talk about. And what is a lower nature is called Prakriti, but what does it consist of? So Krishna Bhagavan explained there to Arjuna, it consists of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and mind, intellect, and ego. It's called eightfold Prakriti. So it's clearly part of this lower Prakriti, the mind. So the higher nature of God is that consciousness, and the lower one is sustained by the higher. That's the main important point over here. So As I said, the mind is clearly part of the Prakriti, but it is powered by the consciousness. And next. So here we will approach it this way. We, the Jiva, have three instruments: body, mind, and intellect. And we will see the difference between mind and intellect. Because when we say mind, we sometimes use generic word for the entire mind, and sometimes we divide into mind and intellect. That's how it depends on the context. Just remember that. So what happens with these three instruments? We experience this whole world around us. When so life works through the physical body, means consciousness gives it the power, we call it life. We perceive the world of objects. The sense organs comes in the play over here. When the life works through mind, we experience world of feelings. So just divide the mind into two, mind and intellect, as though. So mind is like the lower part of the mind and the intellect is the higher part. So with mind, there are feelings and emotions and all that come under the lower mind. And then when the life works through intellect, we comprehend the world of ideas and thoughts. So what do we need to do? We need to tune this instrument properly so we can experience the life properly. So this is where I think Vikram Bhai had said about Sadhguru. His main focus is how to tune our instrument, mind properly, so that I have a good experience. So this is in Vedanta also they talk about the same thing. Next. So we can see that the body is made with gross matter and they are of 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. We have all 5 in us. And sense organ come also from these elements, and the ears come from ether. So there's a connection. And it's very scientific. I won't go into detail right now, but you can ponder upon it or you can do a little more research. Touch comes from air element, vision from fire, and smell from earth element. And subtle body is made up of matter, but subtle matter. Like I explained that it's matter only, but in a subtle form, just like ice becomes a steam. Or the other example I can give is like you have a lump of gold and then you make a very subtle thing like a long chain, patla dhaga jaisa, and then make then the gold has become subtle, something like that. Okay. Next.
Umaji, just one clarification. When we refer to a subtle body as a subtle matter, is matter equivalent to an object or it is non-material?
Well, the matter, that's why it got divided into 2, subtle matter and gross matter. Gross matter is what we can experience with 5 senses. Subtle matter, what we cannot experience by 5 senses, but it still belongs to matter. And when my whole presentation is over, maybe you will get some more clarity because I have brought some other points in.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
So in Sanskrit language, there are these 2 terms are used, Bahyakaran and Antahkaran. Everybody's heard in Hindi speaking people, Antahkaran. So Bahyakaran is a gross body that we can see from or experience from our 5 senses. Antahkaran is mind and intellect, and that's a subtle body called Sukshma Sharira. And that is not available to our 5 senses. It is like, I cannot see my mind, but I know I have it. See what I'm saying? Because mind is more like thoughts, and we will, as we go in the presentation, I'll make it more clear. So what it means by subtle is another definition is inner. Like when we say inner, it's in me. Higher means uska jo status hai wo mind is higher than the body. So if किसी का mind बहुत strong होता है ना, it can control its body to that extent. And it's more pervasive. So there is a little bit of difference here what the Vedanta think of mind. According to mind, Vedanta, the mind is pervaded in our whole body. And mind can even pervade outside. So it's not confined to just the brain. Brain is an instrument that it projects it out, but the pervasiveness of mind is in the entire body. Okay, next. So the mental and intellectual sheet together. So now I want to discuss about subtle body. So what is subtle body? And here maybe a little bit of clarity might come. So subtle body is the mind and intellect sheets, which is made up of thoughts. But these thoughts exhibit 4 different functions. So when we talk about mind, it consists of Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, and Ahankar. You must have heard of these four. So these four divisions are not like, it's not like a box and it's divided into four. No, it's just a different thoughts and different functions, that's all. So what is it? The mind, when we say, so Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankar, जब हम लोग उस divisions को लेके मन बोलते हैं ना, मन. So sense organs जो है ना, when they bring information from the outer world, and it brings it to the mind part of the brain. Not brain, bolna chahiye. Mind part of the mind. Because I don't know how to explain. Mind is divided into these four. Okay? So this lower part of the mind where the data collection happens. And that causes disturbance. Not in a negative way always. Disturbance means halchal hoti hai ki kuch hai. Just like I'm looking at the ocean right now. So, okay, the helicopter is going, something like that. Information is coming and I'm analyzing. Buddhi ka kya kaam hai? It looks at the data and makes a decision. That the decision-making power is called the buddhi. And then we have an ego. What is ego? Ego is nothing but the I thought. The feeling of I-ness and my-ness. This happens in every jiva, we have this ego. Because this is what makes us feel separate from the rest of us. You know? So the data and the thoughts and all belong to an individual ego. So that individuality is called ego. It's part of the mind only. This thought of I-ness and my-ness, because again, it's a kind of a thought only. That's why it is part of mind. And the chit is the most powerful thing because it's an illuminating aspect or conditioned consciousness. So this is what illumines our thoughts. So when we talk about consciousness, we are reflected consciousness. Where does the consciousness reflect in us? In our mind, through our mind. It's like a contact point. Like, for example, I have electricity coming through my computer and I have a contact point. Same way that the connection happens in our mind through the consciousness. Okay, next. So, in general, what do we say? When the mind is happy, I'm happy. When I say I'm happy, actually my mind is happy. That's why. If mind is unhappy, I'm unhappy. The entire life depends on the mind. That's how important mind is. So now there is another way to approach. What is mind? Mind are thoughts. And mind and thoughts are completely interrelated. So if my thoughts are calm, my mind is calm. If the thoughts are agitated, mind is agitated. If the thought is hopeful, mind is hopeful. So thought and mind ka relationship. Whenever there are thoughts, we say the mind exists. And if we have no thoughts in the mind, it's called no mind. So mind only comes into existence as though when the thought starts moving. Okay, and in deep sleep, we have no mind because the mind is folded as though. We have no connection with the mind because there is as though no mind. And also thoughts alone are no mind. Okay, now next slide I will explain. It's an analogy. Okay, so how do we understand this functioning of the mind? So the analogy given by Chinmayananji's mind is compared to a river. And I'm sure he must have taken it from one of the Upanishads. I'm not sure, but this is a very powerful analogy. So now for a river to be called a river, you need flowing water. You need a riverbed and the water has to flow on it, then it will be called a river. Just a pool of water is not going to be called river. It's called pond or something. River means flowing water. Same way, it has to be a continuous stream, in other words. It can be a very small stream or big stream, but it has to be a stream. Same way, thoughts by itself is not called mind, but the flowing thoughts. एक के बाद एक जो आता जाता था, उसको mind बोलते हैं. Okay, so that's a very important way to understand, what mind is. Okay, next. So what happens in the river? If the river is muddy, we call it a muddy river. If the river is clean, we say river, or Pavitra, Ganga, whatever. Whatever the river is, that's how we call it. Whatever the water is, rather. And the water is fast, river is fast. So in the same way now, apply this same thing to the thoughts. If thoughts are good, mind is good. Thoughts are bad, mind is bad. Too much water in the river, floods are going to come, start doing destruction. Too many thoughts, too many thoughts going in your mind continuously, again, it will create havoc in your mind. And then what is the role of intellect? Intellect is like the banks of the river. It directs your thoughts that, hey, this is not right, this is the way it should be flowing. So it's a direction is given by the intellect. And so what is the role of a mind? You could have $1 million beautiful body, but if your mind is unhappy, that person is going to be unhappy. That's how powerful the mind is. So now I already discussed that, but I will say it one more time, that the mind is the instrument where consciousness reflects and makes us alive. So what happens at birth? How does somebody become alive? According to Vedanta, subtle body, remember the mind is a part of the subtle body. We determine that. Subtle body has mind and intellect, and then also it has vasanas, impression from the previous life, and also bundle. Okay, this we call it jiva. So that when it enters the physical body, the subtle prana is a switch. It's just like, okay, I have electricity, I have computer, but I need a plug and turn it on. So that pranas are the one that turn it on. So that connects the gross and the subtle body. And remember, subtle body has a consciousness reflecting in it. So that consciousness reflects through our physical body also. That's what makes us alive. So this is how, we become alive at birth. So since our mind is an instrument where pure consciousness reflects, the reflection will depend upon how pure our mind is. That's the whole, sadhana people do, or practice, or meditation, or any kind of karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, all is to purify the mind. And the analogy is, if the mirror is clean and the sun is reflecting in it, you'll have a perfect reflection. If the mirror is dirty, it won't be perfect reflections. When the mind has all kind of vikar in it, it's not going to shine the consciousness perfectly. So that's why the saints and sages, they have pure mind and they reflect that consciousnness very beautifully. Okay. So what are the things you have heard of all these, but where does it fit in? Because we have 6 impurities in our mind that develop over time. Passage of time. Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Mad, Matsarya. Everybody know desire, anger, greed, delusion, pride, and jealousy. Next. So here, there is something called ladder of fall, we call it in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, verse 62 and 63, where Lord Krishna explains that, it starts with the attachment to something. Clinging attachment, we call it desire. Burning desire, I want this. And if I don't get it, I get angry. So anytime you have anger coming, there is a desire behind it. It doesn't have to be desire for physical objects. It can be desire for emotional things. It can be desire, this person should behave this way. Any kind of desire causes anger. And what happens with anger? Delusion happens. You forget. Loss of memory. Delusion means, I cannot see what it really is. That's called delusion. Loss of memory is a very negative thing that happens. You forget about all the good thing that person has done and you lose your sense. And then what happens? That with you lose your discriminative power. Intellect is destroyed. It's not permanently destroyed, temporary you call it over here. And the person is ruined, means he starts acting like an animal. That's what Krishna Bhagavan said, that's called ladder of fall, that how it happens in the mind. Okay, next. So how to come back to the pure mind now? If we have all these vikaras in us, we get angry, we get all this. We call it 6 sharks. So same vikara, kam, krodh, moh, lobh, moh, vagara. So in Bhagavad Gita, the prescription is very simple. Start with the karma yoga, upasana, and meditation. This is what will make our mind pure, and the light of consciousness will shine brightly in us if we get rid of all these things through this method. So here is the analogy of chariot, beautifully given in Kathopanishad. And just look at this picture. Everybody knows this picture, right? And this is on Bhagavad Gita ke upar ye picture hota hai, but how it is connected to mind, we'll see in the next slide. So what is the analogy of chariot? So chariot ko na body bataya gaya. The physical body is like the chariot, and the owner of the body is the jiva, like Arjun sitting in the back over there, right? He's the owner of the chariot. Horses are the sense organs. The sense organs are running outside, and so इफ सेंस अगर घोड़ों को ऐसे ही छोड़ दिया सेंस ऑर्गन को, तो इधर उधर जाएंगे, भागेंगे और क्रैश हो जाएगा. सो घोड़ों को पकड़ के रखा है लगाम से, एंड द लगाम इज द माइंड. सो सेंस ऑर्गन्स पे माइंड की लगाम होनी चाहिए. एंड देन हु इज होल्डिंग द लगाम? The pure intellect is holding the lagam. That's the analogy in Kathopanishad. And who is the pure intellect? My own self, purified self, which is represented by Lord Krishna. He is holding the lagam. Then you will go to the right place and you will do the right thing. So it's a beautiful analogy of the mind in Kathopanishad. Next. So we call it a journey of life. The English language में भी बोलते हैं कि life is a journey. What kind of journey it is? So according to Vedanta, this vehicle, our mind, will take us to the highest goal of self-realization. So we need to tune our mind, just like if we go to a long journey in a car, we need to tune our car. So if we want our journey to be successful, we need to tune it. So in chapter 6,